Today we will talk about Neil Safier's 2008 book, Measuring the New World, Enlightenment, Science, and South America. Safier analyzes a fragment of La Condamine's journal that is a narrative account of the expedition sent to Quito in 1735 to determine the length of a degree arc of the meridian near the equator. The fragment describes a festival organized by the highland village of Tarqui, a small hamlet in the Spanish-American province of Quito, October 1739. Witnessing the spectacle that day in Tarqui were several of the European members of the geodesic expedition, including La Condamine. However, the local villagers had long been planning a special performance for the foreign guests. At an opportune pause in the equestrian races, a rapt crowd watched as several youths took to the stage. This group of young mestizos, children of mixed European and indigenous descent, wheeled out several large wooden devices, constructed and painted especially for the occasion, and began to fiddle with the virtual parts just as a Parisian astronomer might calibrate a quadrant or a zenith telescope. With theatrical aplomb, they turned their heads upside down and peered into imaginary eyepieces as they adjusted the angles of the oddly shaped shafts. Using improvised writing implements, they scribbled data onto small sheets of invisible paper, scurrying back and forth between the large devices and conferring amongst themselves as to their results. And finally, when the audience might have thought their performance at an end, they began the whole process again, acting out the repetitive gestures they had witnessed so many times while observing the instrumental rituals of their European visitors. What does this Andean pantomime teach us about the production and circulation of knowledge? Safier draws attention to this scene because it encapsulates some of the fascinating dynamics that emerge as science moves away from the laboratories and landscapes it traditionally inhabits in Europe. The pantomime forces us to confront the peculiarities of the encounters that emerged when Europeans extended their field sites across oceans and into radically different social and cultural spaces. The pantomime reminds us that a group of French natural scientists were engaged not with members of their own national communities, but rather with Spanish monarchs' diverse colonial subjects, who were in turn capable of reacting in a fervent, creative, and sometimes hostile manner to European observational practices. In short, the powerful and unexpected juxtaposition of a group of French savants being observed and mimicked by a group of Andean villagers in colonial Spanish territory dispels any overly simplistic ideas about how imperial expansion and instrumental science may have marched in lockstep in the Americas and elsewhere. But how did empirical practices change when they moved outside the confines of Europe? How were they affected by the social and material landscapes through which they passed? These are the types of questions that Safier addresses. In fact, rather than following the monarchical edicts and macro-politics that made it possible for a group of savants to determine the Earth's shape in South America, Safier's book redirects our attention towards the local conditions that enabled them to carry out their observations on the spot. He concludes that experimental science in colonial context was not practiced in a social vacuum. Instead, encounters unfolded spatially and temporally in unpredictable ways, especially between Europeans and the populations they found in the New World.